For more information, reach out to the TWSN team, but we have a ton of stuff coming your way. Content from fantasy football, sports betting for UFC, NBA, NHL, and of course, the NFL. We are so excited to be able to bring this service to you, and let us know if there's any more information you need.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. My name is Matt Levine and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Harrison Vapnek and Anthony Ravasio, and we are proud to bring you the premiere of the TWSN Tailgate. It's our new college football show every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. But before we dive into all these topics here, just take a second to hit that subscribe button below. We got some great content coming out daily. We got daily shows, daily videos. Like, just to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. And in case you weren't aware, like our guy Cody said a minute ago, TWSN just launched a Patreon betting service. We are here to help make you money. We have different subscription plans that can work for anyone, so make sure to check that out and start winning money. All right, guys, how we feeling today?
Harrison, I'm feeling
Anthony?
good.
Feeling great. Happy to be on the show, making debut here on TWSN. We got a great show planned for this week and throughout the season coming up.
We do.
I'm excited.
All right, guys, so let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about here. So first off, we saw some alignment happen over the summer for the different conferences. Oklahoma and Texas both agreed to leave the Big 12, creating somewhat of a panic around the nation for the future of the conferences. So let's start with you, Anthony. What are your thoughts on this movement?
So, yeah, like this summer was pretty crazy. Like if you think about it, you look back, even from when school got out in May. I mean, NIL came out July 1st. And since then, it was just like a waterfall of events. You had Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, like you said. You had the alliance, which to me is like a little weird, but we can talk about that later on. Oklahoma and Texas create like a domino effect. Like, there were reports of teams wanting to go everywhere. Like Kansas was thinking about joining the Big Ten. Like Iowa State wanted to go to the Big Ten, and then you get that Iowa State rivalry back again in its prime too. There was so many rumors of so many teams going everywhere. WU to the ACC, just another example. So it just created chaos that like we haven't seen in the college football offseason in a very long time.
Yeah,
definitely.
There were kind of some rumors that when Texas and Oklahoma, this was back in March, April, that Texas and Oklahoma would be interested in joining the SEC. And I think kind of the floodgates opened in June when they announced that they had the intentions of going from a 4-team to a 12-team playoff in 2024. And that kind of opened up the gates for Texas and Oklahoma to say, hey, let's go join the SEC, a little more margin for error in that conference rather than having to go basically undefeated in this conference. And now, kind of since they made that move, there's been the rumors with the alliance of Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12. And now, after that was first announced, the Pac-12 starting to backtrack off it. And the other teams, I think one of the West Virginia athletic department staff said that you're going to see some teams maybe start backing out of the 12-team playoff because the reason for Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC outside of playoff chances is money, because I think the SEC has significant revenue over the Big 12 because the SEC is the biggest conference in all of college sports. And with them now kind of taking advantage of the rules in terms of the playoff, I think the other schools are recognizing, hey, wait, this is kind of hurting our chances. So maybe the 12-team playoff that was basically set up in June that was rumored might be kind of backtracking off it because of these moves.
Yeah, I mean, and that would definitely be unfortunate because, I mean, I'm all in favor of adding to the playoff. I think that would benefit college football, give more teams a chance. This way we don't see the same 4 teams every single season. But, for me, this move's all about money, which, we all love money, right? But it's weird. It's kind of like Anthony was saying. It's created this movement that we've never really seen before. We're going to start seeing these power conferences, all these alliances. And what stuck out to me is, like you were saying, the Pac-12, their commissioner was like, we'll do this in time. It was not a very firm commitment. And it was weird because then they went out and scheduled a game against LSU, a team in the SEC. So it was kind of strange to see that happen. So it's going to be interesting going forward to see exactly what alliances actually happen and if these guys actually stick to their word.
Yeah,
well, okay, go ahead, Anthony.
Sorry. I just think that the alliance, I mean, it's built on sand. I mean, there's even like a written or a written document saying that, okay, these three teams are, going to be an alliance, to quote. I mean, it is basically, it's about three words. It's money, power, and politics. They want to control what goes on with the CFP. They don't want to give the SEC too much power. And the case where the Big 12 dissolves and the SEC becomes a super conference, then, as it maybe already is becoming, then there's that, I guess that agreement there. But other than that, like, it's basically nothing. It's just built on sand.
Well, Matt, you mentioned the Pac-12. Their commissioner, Larry Scott, who was there for a while, received a lot of backlash for a lot of his moves. There's new commissioner started this past July, George Kliavkoff. And, for this to be his first move is to kind of step into and saying, we're going to join this alliance, and now trying to back off of it and say, hey, we're not committing to this yet, is an interesting move from his part, because he doesn't want the first decision he makes to be the wrong one, because this is basically as big as a decision as you can make, is aligning with other conferences rather than the steady Pac-12. And it'll be interesting to see how it works out, especially with the Pac-12.
Well, yeah, I mean, and my question to you guys, this Oklahoma, Texas, they're going to be in the SEC, right? Do you think that from a football standard, they can be successful in this conference that historically, at least over the last 20, 30 years, has been just this powerhouse? Like, do you guys see them actually working out? Because, we know the Big 12 doesn't really, like, they play defense, but they're not the greatest. They're just more known for offense. And the SEC is all like grinded out in the trenches. They have offense too, but like, what do you guys think about that? Do you think football wise, they can be successful?
So yeah, I mean, obviously Oklahoma will be successful. The question, that everyone was talking about is, okay, Texas, like Oklahoma is going to be able to survive in the SEC. I mean, at least, for the most part. Texas, like, they haven't been like as, what Texas used to be these last few years, or this last decade. So, they're still up there recruiting. They're still up there, winning, 7 or 8 games, 9 games. But like going to the SEC in 4 years is definitely going to be a lot harder than, a relatively easy Big 12 schedule. So I'd say they both survive. I mean, the recruiting is going to be there. It's going to get better, especially being in the SEC. But the competition is going to be harder. So I think it'll be fine for Oklahoma, but Texas could have a little bit of trouble.
I think it's a little early to tell, especially because I think if you were to put Texas and Oklahoma in the conference right now, I would say Oklahoma is probably still going to be one of the best teams in the country. Texas, I would have questions about just because of where their roster is right now. They're still ranked in the AP top 25. I think if they're in the SEC, they would have less, higher standards because they do play in an easier Big 12 and they have that advantage. It just depends how Sarkisian does recruiting and how the team improves in the next 4 years. I think Oklahoma will still be in the same spot. I expect Lincoln Riley to still be there. I expect them to still have Heisman candidate at quarterback every year. I expect them to be fine. These are two of the most historic teams in college football. I don't think they're going to have a big drop off once they hit to the SEC.
Right. I agree with you guys. Oklahoma will be fine. Every year they're in it. They're always fun to watch. Texas is the one that I'm worried about, like we were talking about, but remains to be seen. It might be a little too early. But you know what? Let's just jump into this. Let's break down the Big 12. What are our thoughts for this? This is going to be a good season. There's a couple good teams in the Big 12 that can really make a college football playoff push or just, really be sleepers. So let's get into this. Let's break down this. We're already talking about this. Let's talk about Oklahoma first. What are your guys' thoughts for Oklahoma? Because I see them as one of the best teams in the country, as most people do. I really think they improved their defense. Obviously, Spencer Rattler's still there. The offense was explosive last season. I mean, they trounced Florida in the Cotton Bowl last season, and they're looking to take that momentum this season. So what are your guys' thoughts about Oklahoma this season?
So yeah, I agree with you on everything that you said, Matt. They are, I mean, to me, they're close with Alabama up there, for the best team in the nation. As you said, they trounced Florida last year. Like, it was an embarrassment. It made the SEC look bad even just for a little bit, but yeah, Spencer Rattler is definitely going to be up there for, the Heisman Trophy. I think he honestly wins it. But there are some shots that there are other players that I like, with smaller shots to win. yeah, I mean, I think Oklahoma easily makes the college football playoff as well. I mean, it's Oklahoma. You know, I feel like they're going to be in the conversation every year.
Yeah, the thing last year with Oklahoma is just they got in the slow start. They had a win week one against, I think, Missouri State, and then they fell back-to-back games against Kansas State and Iowa State. Iowa State we knew was one of the best teams in the country last year. Kansas State not so much. You realize if they would have beat that Kansas State game, they probably would have been in the college football playoff as a one-loss conference champion. I thought come the end of the year, because they really finished the season strong last year. You mentioned the Florida win. They had a good win against Oklahoma State. They won, I think, triple or quadruple overtime against Texas on the Red River rivalry game. I think that Oklahoma, I was surprised. I thought Oklahoma was going to be a good team. I'm really surprised when they were 8 people, put them at number 2. They were turning a lot of starters. Spencer Rattler, I think, again, they're 2 best receivers back. They have good depth at running back as always. Marvin Mims, one of their top receivers. Theo Wise, Austin Stogner, their tight end, is going to be, probably a day 2, maybe early day 3 pick in the NFL draft. The schedule is pretty favorable for them, and Lincoln Riley has had success every year at Oklahoma, and now this is the first time he's had a quarterback in a second year, because he had Mayfield for 1 year, he had Hurts for 1 year, he had Murray for 1 year. This is kind of the first time he's going from a quarterback starting 1 year to the next year. I think the Oklahoma Sooners could go undefeated in 2021.
I agree. And sorry, Matt, real quick. I agree. That's why I can question Alabama at 1, because I mean, you don't have like Oklahoma doesn't have first year quarterback coming in. And I mean, the offenses and defenses, look relatively. I know Alabama retools every year, and they do. I mean, they literally just churn out players every year. But Oklahoma just looks like they're a far more complete team to me than Alabama. But
So then, what about that Week 5 matchup they have against Kansas State? Kansas State's beaten them the last couple of years. If they really want to compete for the playoff this year, they can't let this happen for a third time. So for me, that right there, when you look at the schedule, you don't really think Kansas State against Oklahoma is like the big game. But for me, it's like, can they get over this hump and beat Kansas State? I'm sure they can this year, but it's the fact that they haven't done it in the last couple of years.
If Lincoln Riley can't beat Kansas State, Lincoln Riley should make the college football playoff.
I'm totally
back-to-back losing years to back-to-back losses to Kansas State is inexcusable for Lincoln Riley.
If you lose 3 in a row, he's
supposed to be one of the best. One of the best coaches in the country. We can't go into the season looking at the schedule like, oh man, they really got to get past Kansas State. It's Kansas State. They've never played a New Year's Six bowl game. I can't even remember the last time they were good was 2012 when Colin Optimus Klein was their quarterback.
Yep.
Oklahoma shouldn't be worried about Kansas State like that.
They shouldn't, but because that's a big game.
Yes, it's a red flag that they are worried about Kansas State. Is my issue with Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma this year.
Same. And then, they got Week 12 against Iowa State, who a lot of people think is a sleeper for the college football.
Huge. I do.
So we'll see what happens. But let's talk about Iowa State here, guys. I think that's a team we all look at as a team that could surprise some people. They went 9-3 last year. They beat Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. Then they got quarterback Brock Purdy and running back Breece Hall back. What are your guys' thoughts about this team? Because I really think they have a chance to be a sleeper in this conference and nationally. Yeah,
so I love Iowa State. I don't know what they're at in the AP poll right now. I think they're 5th, 6th,
7th.
Something like that. 7th. Okay,
yeah, they're 7th right now.
Like, to me, Iowa State, they're one of the more dangerous teams coming back this year. Like, again, they're complete. They didn't lose that many guys to the draft last year. Breece Hall to me is just like the most explosive running back in all of college football. Brock Purdy is definitely a well above average quarterback. Can elevate that offense for sure. Just like Daly said, they're an outstanding duo.
Well, and I think sorry. Continue.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think it really helps them. If they have a favorable schedule, Iowa, Oklahoma, and Texas are all coming to play them at home. They get wins there. That's a major resume boost for them.
And the rest of the Big 12 isn't. Sorry. The rest of the Big 12 isn't. The rest of the Big 12 isn't that that big of a challenge. Besides
there's a few teams that can challenge them, but there's not many that they should have problems with. We should say.
Yeah.
It also really helps when you're returning 20 starters. This is talk about run it back. We've been talking about in the NFL, the Tampa Bay Bucks are there running it back. They have everyone back. Iowa State Hawkeyes are returning 20 starters, basically everyone on offense. Brock Purdy feels like he's been there for like a decade now. Threw for 2,700 yards last year, 19 touchdowns. Breece Hall, 1572 rushing yards last year. One of the best running backs in the entire nation. And they're bringing back all their top receivers: Xavier Hutchinson, Charlie Cool are their tight end, Landon Akers. Like this is a very good team. Like 12 of their top 15 leading tacklers are back. Like it's an experienced team under a very good coach. They would be the favorites in this conference if it wasn't for Oklahoma, but the test is against Iowa week 2. Like Iowa's a decent football team. Like Iowa State has to be perfect this year. They have to, 11-1. It probably isn't. It's probably not going to cut it, especially because they aren't known as a nationally top team because they haven't really proven anything yet.
But we also have to remember they played Oklahoma really well as of late.
Yeah,
they went 1-1 against them last season. They lost in the championship game, but then in 2019 they only lost by a point. So
and the year before, I think they beat them 2 years before also.
Yeah, like exactly. Yeah. Like they've played Oklahoma really well. So this culture that head coach Matt Campbell's built really has stuck here, and it showed because look at how many returning starters they have. Like I'm big on Iowa State this season. It remains to be seen, can they do it when it really matters? They play Oklahoma, like I mentioned, week 12. They have to go to Oklahoma. They have to go. They go to Norman. They go to Norman to play them. So it's
and the second to last game of the season. Also, they play them on November 20th. There's a somewhat decent chance you're playing Oklahoma twice in 3 weeks.
No, exactly, and it's kind of like last year. Like, can you beat them 2 times if you have to play? Like that's the thing for Iowa State for me. And it's like the Big 12 has some good teams in it, and this is one of them. And like we were saying, then we also have Texas. Good old Texas.
I like TCU too.
TCU
is a good
fun.
sleeper team.
TCU is always fun. Like I am always watching TCU because their offense is always fun to watch. But guys, like we have heard for years, Texas is back. Texas is back, right? We haven't seen the results though. They had some good seasons, but Steve Sarkisian takes over here after the successful stint here with Alabama as the offensive coordinator. What are you guys thinking here? Because for me, I'm not high on Texas. Personally, I'm not a huge Sarkisian fan. I think he's a better coordinator than he is a head coach. But what do you guys think? Because for me, I think they have a somewhat tough schedule. I mean, they start out week 2. They have to go to Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas may not be considered the best team in the SEC, but a win on the road against an SEC team for this Texas squad, that's impressive to me. If they can do that, they might be set up for some good success here. So, like, let's go to you, Harrison. What do you think about Texas this season?
Like, you're replacing Sam Ehlinger, who was there for a long time. Casey Thompson, we think is going to be the starter, but Steve Sarkisian hasn't officially announced it yet. There's a running back I really like on Texas, Bijan Robinson, 8.2 yards per carry last year. If Texas can give him the ball like 25, 30 times per game, there's no reason they can't go 9-3. The schedule you mentioned is brutal. There's a decent chance they could start 0-2. You're playing Louisiana at home. I know it's Louisiana, but they went to Iowa State in week 1 last year, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. They're a good team. They're also ranked number 23 in the country. Then the next week you're going to Arkansas. Arkansas was a 5-5 team last year who got better as the season went on. Like, these first 2 games for Texas can be a real test for Sarkisian, his first time as a head coach in 6 years. Like, it could be. It depends on those first 2 games go. If they start 2-0, they could be rocking on their way to 10-2. If they start maybe 1-1 or 0-2, could be a 7-5 season. All of a sudden, we're already going to put Sarkisian on the hot seat, because that's how Texas football works.
Yeah, I like Sarkisian, but you guys definitely have a point with the first 2 games. Arkansas is no pushover. I know they're probably going to finish in the bottom half of the SEC this year because the SEC is just absolutely loaded, especially the SEC West. But yeah, even if they went 7-5, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't say like it's maybe he's in the hot seat a little bit, but it is his first year. I know like the recruiting is always so good, but yeah, I definitely would not put it past anyone to say that Texas could start 0-2 even. I mean, Louisiana's not even that bad. I mean, I like Louisiana this year too.
If you don't think they're going to put Sarkisian in the hot seat after a 6-6, 7-5 season, let me remind you that LSU won the national championship 2 years ago, and after a 5-5 season, people were calling for Orgeron's job.
Yep.
People, especially these big major programs like LSU, Texas, Alabama, Florida, stuff like that. One bad year, we saw with Willie Taggart also. One bad year, people will come for you.
It's true. Well, okay, guys. So ultimately, who do we see coming out of this conference? Who wins this conference? Let's start with you, Anthony.
I think it's Oklahoma for sure.
Oklahoma.
It's again, to me, they should be the best team in the country. To me, they are. I don't see Texas really giving them issues. I see Iowa State giving them more issues than Texas, but at the end of the day, the best teams can make it out, and I think Oklahoma does.
All right, and over to you, Harrison.
I have Oklahoma going undefeated in the regular season. Iowa State will have either 1 or 2 losses entering that conference championship. I think Oklahoma beats them by a touchdown down in Dallas for the conference championship.
All right, so I think we're all in agreement. I got Oklahoma winning this conference as well.
It's an easy prediction. Probably the easiest of all the conferences.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So let's transition over to another conference. Let's go to the ACC. I think we can all agree there's only a couple teams here, kind of like the Big 12, that we realistically see having like a chance for a playoff run or anything. So let's start with Clemson, right? They lost Trevor Lawrence, but they're still the prohibited favorites here. Other than week 1 against Georgia, they have a relatively easy schedule. And honestly, they're probably going to be back in the ACC title game unless something happens. So what do you guys think about Clemson? Let's go to you, Harrison, first.
I'm going to make my first crazy prediction. I probably have many this season. I'm going to look the camera straight in the eye. For the first time since 2014, Clemson's going to miss the playoff. Clemson, despite being number 3 in the country right now, I'm not sold on DJ Uiagalelei. I saw him play a couple times last year against Notre Dame and Boston College, and they nearly lost both games. I think he's good. I think the drop-off from Lawrence to him is significant. I expect them to lose week 1 to Georgia, even though they're a 3-point favorite. And I don't think this Clemson team is good enough to roll through the entire ACC. I think they're going to get stumbled up at some point like they do most years. I'm not completely sold on this Clemson team. ETN was huge for them in terms of just production and load. He's gone at receiver. They're basically lost Amari Rodgers. They lost Powell. They're getting Justin Ross back, but he also hasn't played football in a year. They have Davis Allen, their tight end, is still there. He didn't do much last year. They still have probably the best defensive line in the country. They got 4 or 5 stars across the board. They lost their cornerback, Kendrick. I'm just not feeling it this year for Clemson. And this, I know it's a bold prediction, but I think they're going to lose week 1 to Georgia. And I think that if I'm going to pick a game that could stumble, either at home against Boston College, who they almost lost to last year, at Pittsburgh's a tricky game, or maybe at Louisville. Or also at Syracuse on a Friday night. I forgot about that. They lost that game in 2017 to a bad Syracuse team. So I'm not completely sold on Clemson. They could probably still win the ACC, which I expect them to do, but they're not going to the playoff this year.
All right, over to you, Anthony.
I can tell you that if they do lose to Syracuse again, they absolutely should not be in the CFP because Syracuse is going to be terrible this year. But I agree to an extent with Harrison. I do think I don't know if Clemson is going to make the CFP or not. It's I feel like it's a little too early to tell. So I think this Georgia game will really show us where they're at as a team and where DJ's at as a quarterback. But I do think that they falter a little bit. They definitely lose one of those games against Boston College, Pitt. Again, I don't think they'll lose to Syracuse, but those you never really know. But those 2 games are definitely underrated matchups for Clemson. And I also do think they lose to Georgia, and I'm pretty sure Georgia is the favorite for that game, which I will definitely be hammering.
Clemson's a 3-point favorite.
Clemson is a 3-point favorite. Well, I'm giving Georgia the points then.
Yeah. Well, you guys know why though they scheduled Georgia so early, because if they lose,
margin for error.
Exactly. No one's going to remember. People remember that they lost week 1, but if they win every other game, it's what have you done for me lately?
In 2013, Clemson was number 8 in the country. Georgia's number 5 in the country, if I'm not mistaken. Georgia had national championship hype. They barely missed the national championship the year before, and they played a week 1 at Clemson, and that basically threw off Georgia's season. And then they played the next year in Georgia, part of a home and home, and I think Georgia won. It kind of threw off Clemson's season. So it's kind of the rubber match year, 7 years later.
Well, we'll see, but I think Clemson will be good, but we'll see. We're gonna leave my playoff prediction for later. But there's a team in the ACC that I'm high on, guys, and that is the North Carolina Tar Heels. This team is known. This school is known for being a basketball program, not a football program. But you know what? They're here. Mac Brown's here. They return arguably the best quarterback in college football with Sam Howell. The guy threw over 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns last season. Another year of experience in this system. What are your guys' thoughts on North Carolina? Do you see them making a run in this ACC conference? Let's start with you, Anthony.
So I do think that UNC is a tad overrated. I understand that Sam Howell is definitely a Heisman candidate, definitely a top 2 quarterback in the ACC. But they lost 42 of their they lost 4 starters on offense coming into this year. That counts for 42 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards, I think. That's hard to replace. And UNC's no Alabama, UNC's no Clemson. Like, they're not going to just, retool like they do. So I think that they struggle a little bit to find that production that they did last year. I think like Howell's going to have a hell of a year. Be a top 10 pick for sure, but top 15 maybe. But I do think that UNC is just a little bit overrated.
I guess you're ready for bold prediction number 2. I don't think North Carolina is very good this season either. I think when we have our show 1 week from right now, North Carolina's going to be 0-1. I think they're going to lose next Friday night in Blacksburg. Enter Sandman, first game back with fans there. It's going to be nuts. In Virginia Tech, we're turning a lot of starters on offense as well. And that's North Carolina's the number 10 team in the country, and West Virginia Tech's unranked, and it's only like a 4.5 point spread. Clearly, Vegas knows something. Not huge on this North Carolina team, just because you mentioned the loss of Newsome, Denami Brown, and then their 2 top running backs who were both ran for over 1,000 yards last year. Now all of a sudden you're relying on 3rd and 4th receivers from last year, Carfay Brown, Josh Downs, who we're going to have a video up later about sleeper players. Keep your eye out for him. I think this North Carolina team is a lot closer to 8-4 than they are to 11-1, 10-2. I'm not really feeling it with them. Schedule's kind of tough. Also, they did avoid Clemson, but you play at Virginia Tech that first game. They host Miami. They go to Notre Dame, go to Pittsburgh, which is always a tough place to play. Anthony knows about that. I'm not big on this North Carolina team. I expect them to. I don't think they'll be in a near 6 this year.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, like, the Enter Sandman intro is probably my favorite in all of college football. That stadium is always just crazy when they run in. It is awesome. But let's talk about another team in this conference. Let's go over to Miami, because Miami is probably, in my opinion, the only other team in the ACC that I can really see like actually having a playoff chance. So, they got killed by North Carolina last year.
Yeah,
there's no nice way to say that.
North Carolina ran for like 700 yards.
Yeah,
that's not an understatement.
It's not a great game for Miami, but they opened the year against Alabama. I don't think that's going to be a particularly close game, because every time someone thinks they can stick with Alabama, they don't. We saw a couple years ago with USC. Washington in the college play. Like, every time a non-SEC team plays them, except for basically Clemson, like, they get trounced basically. So what do you guys think about Miami here? Because they're interesting to me. I think personally they're below North Carolina for me. I know you guys are probably higher on them than I am. But let's start with you, Harrison. What do you think about Miami for this season?
I mean, it doesn't help when you play Alabama week 1 when you're trying to have a successful season. De'Ara King is – people are going to call Sam Howell the best returning quarterback in the ACC. That's fine. He's probably the best draft stock, but – this is De'Ara King's 6th year playing college. He has a lot of experience, and he was outstanding last year. He was in the Heisman conversation the first half of the season. They go to North Carolina. They go to Pittsburgh. Other than that, it's a pretty light schedule. They get Virginia Tech at home. A lot of returning starters, and they had some good transfers. Charleston Rambo, who's a receiver at Oklahoma, he's now there. They basically return all their running backs, offensive line, most on defense. Manny Diaz is now calling the play calls on defense as a former Miami defensive coordinator. That's going to be big. I like the vibe of this team better than I do for North Carolina. I expect this team to beat North Carolina when they go to Chapel Hill, and I think they're going to win the division. It comes down to De'Ara King, because I'm not saying he's better than Sam Howell, but just kind of the system fit where they have more returning starters on offense. They have the offensive coordinator back. The offensive line is good. I'm going with Miami to have a better record. I think 9-3 seems about reasonable for them this year.
What about the ACL injury? Are you concerned about that?
Not. It's been 9 months. I think that's usually the normal timetable. Yeah, I think he'll be okay.
Okay, over to you, Anthony.
Yeah, I agree that Miami will definitely be better than UNC. I do think that 9-3 is definitely a reasonable, even 8-4, reasonable projection for them. I liked the additions of Charleston Rambo, and I love the addition of Tyreek Stevenson, the quarterback from Georgia. I think he's going to be really good and elevate that defense a little bit as well. De'Ara King is absolutely the I wouldn't say question mark, just like the what if factor. That's it's going to make either Miami really good or just like 7-5, above mediocre. I do think De'Ara King is really good. I think that King can elevate Miami to, the Coastal Championship. I don't know if we could, really. I have my eye on another team. You guys both know who that is, but I do think that Miami will be up there at least top two. I do like. I will save it. I'll save it for when we go to. I'll save it for when we go to sleepers, but yeah, I'll save it when we go to the sleepers. But
okay.
I do like Miami. I think they end up taking the Coastal Division barely, but yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just whoever gets trounced by Clemson. Even though we all think that Clemson is a bit worse this year.
Yeah.
So then, are we all in agreement that Clemson is going to come out of the ACC for us, or do either of you want to take Miami? Or I know you're not high on North Carolina, but
Clemson? Miami's not touching Clemson.
So
as much as good, decent as Miami is. And I don't think Clemson's as good, but they're still
the
steps ahead of Miami. I'll take Clemson in the ACC championship over them.
Okay, look at this, guys. 2 for 2. We're all in agreement on the two conferences so far.
We got to switch it up a little bit.
So let's see what happens. I think I know where we're going to all disagree, but we're going to see when we get there. All right, so let's shift gears over here. Let's go to the Big Ten, because to me this is a very interesting division, conference. There's a lot of really good teams in this conference, and I think that could end up hurting them because they all play each other and they could just beat up on each other. So let's start with Ohio State. They're coming off the title game loss. They want redemption, guys. They want this redemption. Ryan Day, they got their new quarterback, CJ Stroud. I think that week 2 game against Oregon, that is going to be a really fun game to watch. If they can beat Oregon, the season starts off really well for them. What are your guys' thoughts on Ohio State and this coming season? Let's start with you, Anthony.
Yeah. So oh my God, Ohio State is obviously the clear favorite in the Big Ten. They are, to me, clearly the best team. They have like minus 400 odds to win the conference. CJ Stroud won the quarterback job. He was the second rated pro style quarterback in the 2020 class, already playing. They've got the best receiver corps in the country for sure, with Chris Olave leading the way. Their last 5 recruiting classes, they finished 5th or higher, and 2 of them were number 2. They have 3 O-linemen. They returned 3 O-linemen, and have one of the best D linemen in the country. And I just think they run away with the title. I'm not going to lie. Penn State may give them a run for their money, but I'm not really high on the Nittany Lions, especially after last year's debacle to an extent.
Okay, and over to you, Harrison.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy pick. CJ Stroud's good, and it also helps when you have literally the 2 best receivers in the country, and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Also, other really good receiver depth. Julian Fleming was the number 1 receiver in his class. He's the number 3 receiver. Jackson Smith in the Jigba is also a really solid receiver. They have the 2 best receivers of the 2021 class. I don't know why all these receivers want to come. These guys aren't going to play as much. Marvin Harrison Jr., the son of a NFL Hall of Famer, Marvin Harrison. He's basically as good as it gets. Defensively, they have some issues in the secondary. I think Sevyn Banks, who went from being like their 4th corner, now he's going to be their number 1. The game against Oregon has a little reminiscence of the Oklahoma-Ohio State game in 2017, I want to say, when Oklahoma went there and won, when Ohio State was overlooking them a little bit. I do expect Ohio State to win that game. I think they're going to go undefeated in the regular season, but I wouldn't be stumbled if they slipped up somewhere.
See, I'm going to come out with my hot take here. Oregon is going to go into Columbus and beat the Buckeyes in week 2. I am very high on this Oregon Ducks team. I'm high. I like Ohio State too, but I think Oregon is going to go into Columbus and win this game.
I like it.
So let's keep this going. Let's go over to Wisconsin, because Wisconsin, they're always there. They're always in the conversation here. They got Graham Mertz. They've shown improvement here, but they opened the season with Penn State. That's a really tough way to open the season. So what do you guys think about Wisconsin here? Let's start with you, Harrison.
I think Wisconsin a lot this year, actually. People they had some poor performances last year offensively. They had like 3 straight losses where they scored a combined like 20 points in those games. I like Mertz coming back. The offensive line, they basically returned like 18, 19 starters. The running back Berger, I really like. It's a very solid defense. I think they're going to win that game against Penn State week 1 pretty handily. Just, again, I talked this with Virginia Tech earlier. When you're coming back home, especially the first game of the year, when you're playing at Camp Randall Stadium, which is one of the most electric atmospheres in all of college football, and you're coming back there with a full house, they're playing jump around, like they're not losing that game to Penn State. I think Penn State's a good team. Sean Clifford's a good quarterback, but that's just such a tough environment to win in. Wisconsin, they're extremely well coached. Mertz got better as last season went on, had some good moments. Wisconsin, I should go 10-2, 9-3 at worst, and win that division pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think Wisconsin is probably the second best team in this conference. But let's go over to you, Anthony. What do you think of Wisconsin this season?
So, I mean, last year they definitely had some growing pains on the offensive side of the ball. That just kind of just led to like a down year overall. I mean, like the run game struggled. Like they didn't really have like a flow. It didn't look like they had a flow at all in the offense. And the pass game, was just hindered. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, obviously, I love Graham Mertz. I think he's a great quarterback. He's like swaggy too. I like that. But I don't know. I don't know if I just don't know if them or Penn State just keeps up with Ohio State. I mean, I know we're really talking about like Wisconsin, but we're really just trying to figure out who's the next best team in the Big Ten. And I mean, I really don't know. I can't tell you yet because I don't like Sean Clifford either. I mean, he's a great quarterback, but I'm not high on him. Just like Harrison said, yeah, I don't know yet.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Penn State. We've all mentioned Penn State here. I think they could be a sleeper team. I do think this opening at Wisconsin is kind of tough. But if they can get a win there, that goes a long way for this team. Indiana, Auburn, and Michigan all go to Penn State, which you don't want to play in Penn State. That's one of the best home field advantages in the country. But they do have to travel to Columbus this season. They always play Ohio State well. And Ohio State has this new quarterback, which, as we've seen in the past, Penn State sometimes takes advantage of things like that against Ohio State. And if they can beat Ohio State, like that really would go a long way for this Penn State team. So, I mean, like, what do you guys think? Like, do you see this Penn State team being successful or not? Let's start with you, Harrison.
I mean, they're good. They're an 8-4 team. Sean Clifford is probably one of the top 4 returning quarterbacks in the Big Ten. They have really good running back depth. I'll give them that. I think James Franklin's a good coach, but they should win all their home games. Auburn, Indiana, Michigan. Those are winnable games. It's just when you have to go to Ohio State and you got to go to Wisconsin and you have to go to Koenig and Iowa. These are tough games. 8-4 is a successful season for Penn State. They know they had the couple of wins in New Year's Six games just because they're a good program. That's the expectation for them. But it's kind of a tough year. They could surprise. I don't have no expectations for them to actually win the Big Ten East. But, Sean Clifford could just have this Joe Burrow magical season. He's been there a while and kind of put Penn State on the map. If they somehow were to beat Wisconsin, I could see them kind of flirting to a 5-0 record going to that Iowa game. They somehow win that, maybe 7-0 going into Ohio State like they were in 2019 when they only had one loss to Minnesota the week before. But it'll be interesting how it plays out. Penn State's definitely an X-factor team where they could either go 10-2 and be in the college football playoff race or 7-5 and kind of a repeat of last year for them.
I mean, do you guys see them even having a chance against Ohio State?
I do. They've played them competitive every year that basically that James Franklin has been there. Even the year Ohio State is really good. They were within like a touchdown in the second half.
Yeah. All right. So Anthony, what are you thinking for Penn State this season?
I mean, I agree. I do think that I feel like even like the best Big Ten games are always relatively close. Like, they're always relatively fun to watch. I also agree that they by far have like the widest ceiling to floor margin, I think, out of any Big Ten team. Maybe I'm missing like a few teams at the bottom of the pack, but they definitely could be, like a 10-2, but they could also be like a 7-5. They have a first-year offensive coordinator. It's like their third coordinator in 3 years. Again, I don't like Sean Clifford all that much, but I do like the running back corps. They've got Devin Ford and Noah Kane, I think, are going to be returning again for the running. I do like them both, but again, I don't think they can compete with Ohio State. I don't know about Wisconsin. I'm leaning toward they're going to lose to Wisconsin, but I just think that they'll be closer to their floor than they will their ceiling.
Okay. So then who do you guys have coming out of the Big Ten then? I mean, I got Ohio State. Let's start with you, Anthony.
I think we're going to be 3 for 3.
3 for 3. Harrison,
I think I'm going to go
are you
Ohio
going
State.
with us here?
I'll take Ohio State over Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship yet again.
Yeah, that's how I have it also.
Who do you guys have winning the West, I should say? Do you have Wisconsin or do you have Minnesota or Iowa? Because both of those teams definitely have a chance.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. I like Iowa.
Iowa will be competitive, but I don't see them taking that next step.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, Wisconsin against Ohio State in the championship game, and I have Ohio State coming out also. So look, guys, we're 3 for 3. I think this next conference here might be the one where we kind of go against each other. Let's talk some Pac-12 football. So there's some pretty good teams in this conference here. Let's start out with one team that I know Harrison's very high on, Utah. So Utah is once again going to be a team to deal with, and they should compete with USC for the Pac-12 South. But they got to travel to USC this season, somewhere they don't play. They don't do particularly well. So a loss to the Trojans there, that kind of messes up their season. So explain to me, Harrison, why are you so high on Utah this season?
I'm probably higher on Utah than anyone in the country. I think Utah could be in the college football playoff.
Number one Utah fan in the country, guys.
Might be up there. Charlie Brewer was the quarterback at Baylor when they had a pretty successful season a couple years ago. They're extremely well coached. They have the best defense in the Pac-12, maybe even the country. They're returning basically every starter. They added 2 really good running backs I like, Chris Curry from LSU, TJ Pledger from Oregon. 2 exceptional linebackers, Devin Lloyd, Nefi Sewell. Lloyd has had 150 tackles, something like that in the last 3 years combined. They bring back everyone on their offensive line. Very favorable non-conference schedule, Weber State, BYU, San Diego State. The USC game, they lost that game a couple years ago. This year, it's on a Friday night, as it was that year. They have a bye going into it, which obviously helps. And they get those really tough teams at home. They get Oregon at home. They get Arizona State at home. They get UCLA at home. I'm telling you, they could be 11-1 and a win away from the college football playoff. And I think they're a little angry. They were also a 4-2 team last year. They were so close to the playoff in 2019. And they stumbled against Oregon in that first quarter. And they never picked up steam from there. I think that chip is still on their shoulder even 2 years later. And I think Kyle Whittingham is going to step it up for Oregon or step it up for Utah and bring them back to where they were 2 years ago in a position to make the college football playoff.
I mean, and I do think it does provide them some cushion that, teams like UCLA, Oregon, they go to Utah, and it's never easy to play in Utah for anything. Look at the Utah Jazz in the NBA. That's one of the best home crowds. So what do you think, what do you think, Anthony? Are you as high on Utah as Harrison, or are you like me where they're going to be good, but they're not going to be the greatest team here?
Before I say anything about any of the teams, I just wanted to let you guys know how wide open this conference is. This is for reference, Oklahoma's at to win the conference, Oklahoma's at 60% for the Big 12. Clemson's at 54. Alabama's at Alabama's at 53 and Ohio State's at 47. The USC has the best chance to win the Pac-12 title at 27%. That's crazy. Oregon second, 21. Washington's 13. Utah 12. Arizona State's 10. So this conference is wide open. I do like Utah. The addition of Charlie Brewer is really good. He led them to I think it was the Sugar Bowl last 2 years ago and won.
Yeah.
He had a great year.
They lost that game.
Okay. He had 65 touchdowns, 22 more rushing in his career with the Bears, and only 20 interceptions. I mean, that's what the Utes need. They need a consistent quarterback. But I'm higher on a few other teams. I do like USC more than USC more than Utah. I like Oregon more than Utah. I could see the argument with Utah over Washington, and I also like Arizona State over Utah. I like ASU. I feel like they're always a sleeper to win the entire conference, every year. Jaden Daniels is in year 3. He had 22 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions the last 2 seasons. And what I like the most about ASU is they construct their coaching staff just like Alabama does, bringing all these professional guys in for making like a pro-oriented offense. And I like that. Like they brought in Marvin Lewis, Zach Hill, Lewis, and Antonio Pierce are co-defensive coordinators, and I think that's a great thing to do. And obviously Herm Edwards. I think it's a great thing to do for just to lead the team, to give them what they need to succeed in college football and at the next level. So I like ASU. I think Jane Daniels finally takes that next step, and they get to the Pac-12 championship game and pull it out.
So so your hot take is that ASU goes to the Pac-12 championship game?
It is.
Okay.
It's not. The hot take is that they go. I'm leaning towards that they hope that they win, but it's tough to see right now. November 6th is going to be crazy.
Okay.
USC at Arizona State and Oregon at Washington.
That's never a good game for the Trojans to go into Arizona State. But, let's talk about the Trojans here, because this team, I truly feel this is a make or break year for this team. Fans, media, they've been calling for Clay Helton's head for years now. And honestly, the school can only keep him for so long, provided that he continues to win. But, the time is now for this team. They're coming off a 5-0 record before they lost to Oregon in the Pac-12 title game last season. They bring back Keaton Slovis. They have Drake London. They're a really good receiver. So what do you guys think of USC? Because I might be higher on USC than some of you. And I know we talked about this the other day, but let's start with you, Harrison, because I know you said you weren't as high on SC as I am. So let's talk about this.
It's not that necessarily I'm not high. It's just we do the same thing with USC every year. We overrank them to start the season. They don't play well against a non-conference team, and they start to stumble from there, and they eventually finish with the same record. I don't think Slovis is all that. People are talking like NFL first-round pick. I certainly don't see it in him. I like the receiver Drake London a lot, but outside of the one year they won the Rose Bowl with a miracle season from Sam Darnold, we get the same story from USC every year, and I don't see why they're not an 8-4 team this year. They play Stanford at home, which week 2, that's a losable game. I don't think Stanford's that bad. They play Utah at home. They go to Notre Dame. They go to Arizona State. They play UCLA at home, everything they do every year. They go to BYU. I'm just not high in this US. Yeah, Colorado also was a good team last year.
That's never an easy place to win.
Yeah, especially when you're up in the mountains and the altitude. I'm not falling into this USC trap. People, because they're ranked number 15, people will fall into it. I'm going to avoid it.
All right. So Anthony, Mr. ASU over here, what do you think about USC?
Well, I do think I like Slovis. Their offensive line is set in stone. It's really good. The receiving corps is relatively experienced and dynamic. It's got road games against Washington State, Colorado, like you said. They're gonna come to ASU, and they're gonna get a Cal. So it's not like a gauntlet, but there are definitely some games that could sneak up on them, for sure. Just like Harrison said, and they could definitely lose. I do think that I don't think that I'm torn about it. I'm sorry, I'm torn about USC. I like Slovis, but I don't know if they're all that or not. I don't think they're all that or not, but I think it's good enough to compete with at least ASU to get to the Pac-12 championship.
I think Clay Helton's point too of which team is going to be an offensive coordinator for next year.
Yeah, I'm not. See, I'm high on this USC team. I'm not high on Clay Helton. I think he should have been gone a while ago. I'm not. I still can't believe he's still the head coach. I'm still of mindset they should have kept Orgeron back when he was there.
Yeah,
I love Orgeron.
I was looking up that stat the other day. Orgeron was 6-2 as the interim coach, and they just let him go.
And the players,
they beat Stanford when they were number 4 in the country.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on
bizarre.
with USC then, but all right.
So the same issues that are still wrong with them.
Well, yeah. I love this USC team, but I agree with you to some degree, Harrison. Every year, it's the same narrative with this team. So let's see if they can break through this season. But the other team I want to highlight in the Pac-12, the Oregon Ducks. As I mentioned earlier, I think they're going to go into Columbus and beat the Ohio State Buckeyes in week 2. But, we'll see, because this team also, this happens every year. We're super high on them, and then they stumble against some team, right? They have to travel to UCLA. They travel to Washington, to Utah this season. So it's a tough schedule for them. But I really like this Oregon Ducks team. So let's start with you, Anthony. What are your thoughts on the Ducks?
Well, I mean, to say I like them better than I do USC. I definitely think they'll be representing the North in the Pac-12 championship. Them and Washington are definitely going to be a fight. Like I said, November 6th they play each other. I think Oregon's at Washington. That's going to be one hell of a game. Same night that ASU's playing USC. Where are they ranked right now in the top 25? Are they like
they are currently top 11.
11th? Okay. Yeah, I like the Ducks. I mean, like you said, it's like every year. I feel like it's like this for every Pac-12 team. Like they get some type of hype, and then none of them end up finishing in the top 25. So I'm not really sure yet. Like again, you gotta be cautiously optimistic, but I definitely like Oregon on the North.
Okay. So who do you guys have coming out of this conference? Like I personally think it's going to be USC and Oregon in the title game again. So I'll give my pick after you guys. Let's see if we go for or whatnot. So let's start with you, Anthony.
No shot.
Who do you have coming out of this conference?
I'm gonna go with ASU.
ASU. Okay, so ASU is gonna win the Pac-12. Okay, all right, bold. All right, Harrison.
I like Oregon. They have the best coach in the Pac-12, Mario Cristobal. I wish Miami would have hired him a year earlier, but it didn't work out in terms of the timing. I would love to see them go to Ohio State week 2 and win that game. I'm not sure they're fully capable of it. Their quarterback, Anthony Brown, I think he's solid. They should win the North. The North is a lot weaker than the South. And we're going to get Oregon and Utah rematch in the Pac-12 championship game, what we saw in 2019. I think it's Utah winning the Pac-12, I think, for the first time in a long time.
All right, so I'm going with the Oregon Ducks to win this conference. So, look, we finally broke apart, guys.
There we go.
So we got ASU from Harrison. We got Utah. I'm not here from Anthony. We got Utah from Harrison, and then I got Oregon.
Go Utes.
None of us chose USC.
Guys. No, I almost chose USC, but like I said, every year they stumble.
We didn't talk about UCLA. I know some people are high on them, but I'm not necessarily.
I mean, I think UCLA has some potential here, but I really don't love.
And then you realize they're coached by Chip Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, and then they have their week 1 test against LSU. That's going to be tough. Like I know it's in Pasadena, but like I really don't see UCLA winning that game. So
that's definitely make a big year for Chip Kelly.
I mean, yeah, if they don't win, he's probably out. That's as simple as it for me for UCLA for this season. But let's go to the best conference. We saved the best for last here, the SEC. What are your guys' thoughts on the SEC this year? Because we all know Alabama's there, but there are some teams that could challenge them, right? I think one of them is the Georgia Bulldogs. What do you guys think about them? I mean, JT Daniels is back. He needs to prove that he can stay healthy and everything. They match up against Clemson week 1, which is a big game for them. They go to Auburn. But what do you guys think? Anthony, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so Georgia had 10 players named to the Senior Bowl watch list. Like that's a bit crazy. They had 3 All-Americans, including their offensive lineman Jamari Saylor and Jordan Davis, the D lineman. They also had an insane amount of highly touted transfers this offseason. JT Daniels is definitely in the conversation for Heisman. I think that he can, honestly win it. They have a favorable schedule. Their pass rush is just absolutely lethal. The only issue with Georgia is that their secondary has to reload. Kelly Ringo, the 2020's top cornerback, is going to have to come in and play a lot, which I honestly think he can do. Darion Kendrick transferred from Clemson. Fifth-year senior Amir Speed was pretty good, and there's a West Virginia transfer in Tyke Smith, who was actually an All-American last year before getting injured, and he was not again this year. And they also don't have George Pickens, so I don't know. I like Georgia a lot. I definitely think they can beat Clemson, but they do have some issues.
Okay, over to you, Harrison.
I love this Georgia team. This is kind of the first time in college football like feel that they seem like they're like a free agency built team because they're relied on so many transfers across with the 2 defensive backs they added and their quarterback and some of their receivers. They have incredible depth at running back. I think they have 2 really good tight ends I like, including Darnell Washington, who is my favorite player in college football. Like, if he just gets his chance, I'm telling you, he had like 7 catches last year for 100-something yards. But like when I watch him play, I'm like, this guy's a chance to be the most dominant tight end in the entire sport. They do have injuries. I don't know who's going to play in that Clemson game, who's not. Their best receiver, George Pickens, tore his ACL back in March. They hope to get him back around mid-season. I'm hoping that come maybe the Florida game, or say get him back, but definitely as they make the SEC championship run. I think Kirby Smart's a very good coach, and this is his best team since the team that lost in overtime in the national championship. And this is the time they have to prove it. I think it's championship or bust for the Bulldogs. I
second that. I'm very high on this Georgia team as well. But let's move over to another team in the SEC East, the Florida Gators. They lost Trask. They lost Kyle Pitts. Where do they go from here? They're still highly ranked, but where do they go from here? Let's start with you, Harrison.
They go to Emory Jones, who has trouble throwing the ball more than 15 yards. He's not a quarterback. He's a very good wildcat quarterback, and that's about it. I wouldn't be surprised by like 3-4 games in the year that Anthony Richardson, who threw 2 passes last year, is going to be the starting quarterback, just because they're going to realize that Emory Jones is not the guy. They're going to get blown out by Alabama week 3. They might lose at Kentucky. They'll probably lose at LSU. Georgia, I expect them to lose. Even Missouri's going to be a tough contest for them. Like, this Florida team's not very good. They lost all their top guys. Tony's gone. Pitts is gone. Grimes is gone. Copeland is their best receiver. They have a couple of good starters on defense. Khair Elam is a corner I really like a lot. It's just last year was kind of their year that they needed to do it, and they stumbled against Texas A&M and LSU, and if not for that, and they gave Bama a great test because Florida was a good team last year offensively, but defensively they gave up 48 points per game in the last 3 games of the season. Oklahoma ran all over them, so this Florida team won't be very good this year, despite being ranked 13 in the country, which is absurd.
Right. All right. Well, what do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I agree. They lost so many pieces. And just look at their schedule. Like, they're playing in the SEC. Like Alabama again. Like Harrison said, week 3. You've got Kentucky, which I think is an underrated team. I honestly think Kentucky could beat them. LSU, Georgia, Missouri. I just don't. Even Florida State could even give them somewhat of a challenge. I don't think highly of Florida either. The Oscar is definitely here to do it with Trask and all the weapons they had. I just don't think they're going to go anywhere this year.
Okay, so do you guys see any other teams other than Florida or Georgia really making any noise in the SEC East?
Yes. No one is talking about Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking. Let me get into Ole Miss real quick.
Okay, go ahead. I was thinking East.
Okay. So listen. Ole Miss was 27th in the AP poll. The preseason AP poll. They've got Matt Corral. He threw for 3,400 yards and 29 touchdowns last year alone. He's a Heisman candidate. RG3 named him his Heisman candidate for this year. They also have Darion Ely, which Kirk Herbstreit said that it's college football's best kept secret. He's a former 5-star. They have a balanced and devastating offense. I like them a lot, and of course Lane Kiffin, one of the better offensive minds in the game. They do have a very tough schedule against the SEC. They're going to start 3-0 and have a bye week until when they go and play Alabama. And I'm not going to make any predictions now, but that game could definitely be on upset watch, at least for the Crimson Tide. I think Ole Miss is very underrated and will finish in the top 15 this year.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about SEC East teams, but I'll definitely hop in Ole Miss as well. The thing with Ole Miss, their ceiling, I think, is last year's Florida, just because they don't play much defense, but offensively they can outscore basically anyone. Matt Corral throws a lot of touchdowns, also throws a lot of picks, and makes interesting decisions with the football.
Very interesting.
But they're definitely a fun team to watch. I think they could go 8-4. Going back to the SEC East, Missouri, there's a decent chance they're going to go 8-4. The schedule works out in their favor. Connor Bazelak was the SEC freshman of the year last year. Tyler Beatty's their starting running back. He's returning. Defensively, most guys coming back. Blaze Aldridge with a transfer from Rice, I believe. He's very good. He could be a day 2 pick in the NFL draft next year. Eli Drinkwitz in year 2. And there's some expectations here in Columbia for the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a couple teams that can make some noise. I do like the Missouri team. I think they're not going to win the East, but I think that they can make some noise here. So moving over to the West, I know we just talked about Ole Miss here, but I mean, this is probably Alabama's to lose, I'd say. Alabama is just Alabama. Every year they retool, no matter who leaves. I mean, Nick Saban just puts them in a position to win. They opened the season against Miami. Like I said earlier, I think they're going to destroy Miami. I really don't see that being very close. But then the biggest game to me, and I'm sure you guys will agree, is week 6. They go to Texas A&M. Nobody likes playing in College Station. That place is always wild and just crazy, and it's such a fun atmosphere. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think A&M can beat this Bama team? Do you think this is Bama's conference to lose, or what are you guys thinking here? Let's start with you, Harrison.
I mean, Texas A&M was crying about not making the playoff last year, despite losing to Alabama by like 40 points, like 52-14 when they played in Tuscaloosa. I don't see why it's going to be any different this year. I don't think Texas A&M is as good as they were last year. I think they have some very good running backs. Devin Akane, who kind of broke out of that Orange Bowl game. I think he's very good. Isaiah Spiller is one of the top backs in the SEC. It's just the quarterback position is a question mark for them. Jimbo Fisher hasn't officially announced a starter yet. I think it's going to be their freshman quarterback, Haynes King, who's pretty good. It's just I'm not feeling it for Texas A&M, and
not on the bandwagon.
I don't think they're number 6 in the country. I don't think they'll finish in the top 10 come season's end. They could be 9-3 ish, but there's no reason to expect them to beat Alabama, even though they're at home.
Okay, and what about you, Anthony? Are you high on this A&M team, or are you just kind of like this is Bama's to lose?
It's definitely Bama's to lose. I think A&M's good. I think that they haven't named a starting quarterback yet, even if it's just because they don't want to give any teams any edge going into the season. I think the fact they haven't named a starting quarterback yet is a little concerning. I mean, just compare the roster to Alabama's. They're they don't compare in multiple aspects. It's just we're just talking about we're not talking like David versus Goliath, but I mean it's definitely not far from it either. They're 6, but I feel like Alabama's just a whole other tier in the SEC above Texas A&M for sure.
So I mean, do you guys have just Alabama winning this conference, or are we going 4 for 5 out of these conferences? Because I have Alabama, coming out of the West, and then they're gonna win the SEC again. So what do you guys think about the SEC as a whole here? Start with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I think Alabama comes out of the SEC for sure. I feel like it's even just their conference to lose. Again, I don't know if they'll really. I don't know if they'll. I think Oklahoma's better. If they get through Oklahoma if they get to Oklahoma in the CFP, I think they lose. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the SEC. So I think the SEC is Alabama's to lose for sure. Okay,
and you, Harrison?
I couldn't be any happier that you guys both said Alabama. I'm going with Georgia. Georgia is my squad this year. I'm rolling with the Dogs. They might stumble once in the regular season. That happens a lot. I think they're going to go into Atlanta and take on Alabama in the SEC championship and beat them. Kirby Smart's played Alabama 3 times since becoming the head coach of Georgia. He's 0-3. He's led all 3 games at halftime. Could have easily won all 3 of these games. This is 4th time's a charm when Kirby Smart will take on Alabama in the SEC championship. JT Daniels is the best quarterback that they've had. This is the best running back depth they've had since they had Chubb and Michelle. Great receivers, good defense. Georgia will win the SEC in 2021.
Okay, so we are all 3 for 5 then for our conference picks. So before we go into our college football predictions here, I just let's talk about just a couple sleepers here. Let's each of us just name 1 or 2, and let's go through that. Let's start with you, Harrison, and then we'll go to Anthony.
Well, I did a sleepers video here on TWSN YouTube. You guys can check out that video. I'll name a couple of those teams. Boston College, I really like. Phil Yurkovich is a fantastic quarterback. Zay Flowers, very good receiver. We talked about Ole Miss and Utah. I'll go with Central Florida. Keep an eye out on them in the American. I really like the addition of Gus Malzahn. Their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, is one of the better returning quarterbacks in all of college football. Good linebackers, favorable schedule. 10-2 is in the picture for UCF and potential conference championship.
Okay, and over to you, Anthony.
Yeah, for my sleepers, I had basically I liked Pitt. I told you I liked Pitt. I liked Boston College as well as Harrison. I loved Ole Miss out of the SEC, even though I don't think like they can make any strides CFP wise. I like Kentucky too. They're a bit more of a project. Obviously Georgia and Florida, they're 1-2 in that division. It just comes down to Tennessee, Kentucky, and I'm glad to take Kentucky. I like Mark Stoops, and he dominates the trenches there and has the weapons offensively. So I like Kentucky to finish third in that division. But CFP wise, I guess you could say Iowa State is a sleeper for the CFP. I would definitely agree. I do like Iowa State a lot. I would have to go with ASU because I said that they would win the conference. That would therefore make them a sleeper for the CFP as well. Yeah, I think for the CFP, those two teams are really my sleepers for the playoff.
Okay. I mean, and for me, I have my two biggest. First one is Washington. I know we touched on this a little bit, but they typically have something to say about the Pac-12. I mean, I still think it's Oregon's to win. But let's be honest, Washington should have been in the Pac-12 title game last season. They had, COVID hit and they had some injury. Like Washington should have been there. They have to travel to Michigan in week 2. That's going to be a tough test for them. Michigan's not the best football team, but, it's never easy to go out there and win. But I think Washington can make some noise here and compete with Oregon. And then my biggest one, the LSU Tigers, guys. This team just won a national championship last year, and then they lost all their starters. They still somehow went 5-5 with not a great team. They went into Florida and beat the Florida Gator. Like, I don't think people are paying too much attention to LSU here. And like we talked about it earlier, like Orgeron is on the hot seat after winning a title 2 years ago, and we had the COVID season last year. Like they have elite talent on both sides of the ball here. I know they lost Miles Brennan, but Max Johnson has proved that he is more than capable of taking over the starting job. They bring back Derek Stingley on defense, and the fact they got Auburn and Florida coming to Baton Rouge next year or this year. Tiger Stadium is always packed and roaring and just a fun atmosphere. So I think LSU can make some noise. I think they're gonna end up in a New Year's Six bowl. They have a very slight chance at the playoff if things go their way. They have to obviously beat Alabama and all that, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. But I like this LSU team going into this season. All right, so what we want to finish off this first episode here with our college football playoff predictions, right? See what's going to happen. So let's start with you, Anthony. Who are the 4 teams making your college football playoff, and who's coming out on top?
Okay, so I like obviously the winner of the SEC is going to get every time. I like Alabama. I'm going to go with Oklahoma as my second team, and then I'm going to go Ohio State, and then I think Georgia makes it as the 4th team. With the win of Clemson will definitely solidify that. I honestly think they could, they'll finish right behind Alabama and sneak into the CFP. That's what so I'm going to go Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Georgia.
And who is your national champion?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma.
Okay. All right, over to you, Harrison.
I will go through my final rankings. The number 1 team will be Ohio State at 13 and the Big Ten champions. Number 2 will be Georgia, 12-1, the SEC champions. Number 3 will be Oklahoma, 12-1. They'll stumble somewhere in the regular season as the Big 12 champions. And number 4 will be 12-1 Alabama as undefeated in the regular season, lose the conference championship. The 2 teams on the outside looking in will be Utah and Clemson. And my national championship will be for the first time in 41 years the Georgia Bulldogs.
All right. So I got somewhat of a similar one to you guys. I have Oklahoma, number 1. I think Oklahoma, at least regular season, they're the best team at the moment. Number 2, I'm going with Alabama because I have them winning the SEC. Number 3, I'm going with Ohio State. And then 4th, I think Georgia gets in. I think despite them losing to Alabama, I think they're going to keep it close. Georgia gets in. And then I have Georgia winning it all as well.
Really? Okay.
I think Bama beats them in the SEC title game, but I think Georgia comes through the playoff and wins. I am very high on this Georgia team. I just think that Alabama beats them in that one game. So we got Oklahoma from Anthony, and we got Georgia from Harrison and I.
Go Dogs.
Yeah, Matt,
Dogs.
we had the same CFP.
We did.
No Cincinnati, no Oregon, no.
I think Cincinnati
Texas
is going to be a good team. But they have to travel to Indiana, to Notre Dame. If they lose one of those games, I can't say that they're still going to be in the conversation here. I mean, and Notre Dame is always in the playoff hunt, but
yeah,
they
I
never
think Notre
win.
Dame's going to finish unranked. I posted a video the other day.
Exactly. Like they never win. Once they get to the big stage, they don't win. And I think that's the problem with this Notre Dame program. I mean, they also have a tough schedule. They got Wisconsin, they got Cincinnati, USC, North Carolina. Like they just have a really tough schedule. So I don't think Notre Dame's going to be there. I still think they'll be ranked, but I don't think they're going to be a top contender this season. But is there anything else that you guys want to touch on here? Or
I'm really. We got Nebraska versus Illinois starting in a little over an hour.
Yep.
At this time next week Wisconsin will be facing 3rd and 8 at their own 15-yard line for the first time. It's gonna be fun. I'm really excited for what this season's gonna look like. I'm really excited for the show.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great season.
Next few months are gonna be good.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this show. For this season. So again, thank you everyone who tuned in. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you download the TWSN mobile app so you never miss any content that is put out by our incredible writers and analysts. And again, we launched a betting service the other day. We are here to help you make money. You need to spend a little money to make that money. Our service is through Patreon. We want to help you make this money. We have a whole team dedicated here. So make sure to check that out and subscribe. Thank you again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the TWSN Tailgate. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.